So so we're doing pub theology. The way I'm looking at this first year, I'm leading a lot of it, and I have some volunteers a volunteer that helps me organize them, and then some dedicated people that will show up. And so for the next year, it'll be, okay, you dedicated folks that have showed up, would you like to have a role in what we're doing? And then look to have them be a part of the team that leads that. And then certain things, it's probably good to have me doing, like facilitating the conversation is a good way to make sure that there's no stupid comments along the way or something like that. Not that other lay people aren't capable of that, but you know what I mean. And that equipping other people in that sense, and small group leadership, I don't lead a whole lot of them by myself, because I feel like it's an easy trap at a church of 500 people, that if the only new small groups are ones that I'm leading, then suddenly I'm doing 5 small groups, and that's not good. And I think I do that, I err in that model so much from my experience of not wanting to be stuck doing everything by myself, that it probably looks like I don't want to do it in the first place to some folks, or it could look like that. Like, why haven't you started another small group for this? Well, I don't want to start it if I don't see a path for it to be able to be self-sustaining. So I think that desire to see everything I'm doing be something that's built in a way that can be sustained is one of the biggest things that came out of that experience. I also think the way I talk about our church, coming from a place where like you almost had to market your church to get people to come to it, I don't want to do that with Braddock Street. And I feel like it's a privilege that church has to say, like, look, we're out here doing this. We want to witness that folks who are of faith care about these issues. If you want to come to Braddock Street and learn more about us, fantastic. But if you go to a different church, then God is good. Like, it does not matter where you go to church. And I think that would give certain people I've worked with in the past, like, hives, if I talked about it that way. Because it's, by saying that in church business speak, I'm saying I don't need your money, I don't need your attendance, I don't need your numbers, if it's not why we're here. And my thinking is, long term, that will do more to endear people to what we're doing than it would be if I were to try to say, by the way, come to church on Sunday, and pushing it that way. And going back to what you mentioned earlier, that's why I feel really good about that and feel at peace with that, because I think it's more about the relationships we build. Because at the end of the day, if our church is the one doing these things where we go out in the community to build relationships, that's going to show in where those folks decide to go to church, if they decide to go to church. And I don't think me saying 73 nice things about Braddock Street is going to change that any more than just having those relationships with people. One of the things I've missed, and I've enjoyed CPE and got to build a lot of relationships with people here, the time spent out in community meeting people is something I've missed since I've been doing this, because I don't have the time to do that. And so it was, I guess the reason I try not to be, to swing my resentment anchor more, is I do feel like that style of pastoring and leadership is something that I feel very called to. Perhaps not in the explicit church planting mode, because of the way that played on my anxiety more often than not. And I also think if it wasn't for my family, I would be an overworker, and I would spend a lot more time trying to do things that at the end of the day wouldn't be healthy for me. I made the comment, I think I told you at one point in the last few weeks, like, I've been struggling with being a good dad and being a decent pastor, and being a good pastor and being a decent dad. Sometimes using mediocre instead of decent. And I forget who I said that to, but they were just like, we could all probably be amazing pastors, but at the end of the day, I try to ask myself, when I go to my funeral, when my funeral happens, who's coming? and those are the people that I would want to spend more time with and show more care for, because they're the people that are actually going to be with me through all of this. I haven't quite thought of it that way. Give myself a few more years before I start thinking about that. But I think it's kind of freeing to think that as long as I'm doing my faithful work as a pastor, and God called me just as much to be a husband and a dad as my job. And for like anybody else we talk about, the job doesn't define who you are. It's a sacred job,
Right.
and it's a job. And I can't imagine God wanting me to burn myself out. So.
Yeah. So, yeah, what I'm hearing you really talking about is and I think Bowen is probably helpful, at least helpful to me in recognizing the importance of the balance.
Yeah.
I mean, working harder, and I think I've worked pretty hard in my career, but working harder is not a guarantee
Yeah.
of success. Thinking clearer, I think gives you a better shot.
Yeah.
That's me. Thinking clearer, and I think Bowman helps that. So, again, at those times when I can regulate my own anxiety, especially in response to other people's anxieties, either they're projecting on me or they're projecting on my position. The thing that Steinke said on Monday in that tape is, that video that we watched, was that people often project on the pastor, but not the person,
Mm-hmm.
but on the pastoral role or the pastoral office or the pastoral functioning. And if I can somehow separate some of that out and think about how I might be able to think a little more clearly.
Yeah.
One of the behaviors that I've been trying to work at is that I don't have to respond right away to everything.
Yeah.
And when I do respond, right away, it's usually not my clearest thinking,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm usually a lot more anxious about it.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean I can't be with the person.
Mm-hmm.
It just may mean I'm doing reflective listening and thinking, okay, I got to stew about this one for a little while, or I got to think about this one and come back around.
Yeah.
But at the heart of the matter is, how do I regulate my own anxiety, so that I can function better in my role or roles.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you have competing forces of anxiety, the togetherness force and the separation force, and we think about those in family context, but those are very real in work context. They're very real in educational context. They're very in every relationship. We have that push-pull force going on within us all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So how can I be less reactive to that consistently and more principled in all of those relationships? And it ain't easy, but that's what I'm trying to do. Sometimes that means I need a little time before I can respond.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Don't know if that's helpful to you. I don't know if that's helpful.
I think it's affirming, because that's one of the things that I've tried to do, is be like, I don't have to answer emails right away. You know, no one's going to die if this doesn't get answered today. I think for me, I'm wrestling with the pendulum swinging of like, I gave myself that freedom, and so it's like a couple days later, it's like, I probably should actually do this now. But trying to, I guess, let that stop swinging a little bit and find that middle ground of like, okay, I'm cool with, I've tried to stop checking email after a certain time of night. I never would, well, that's not true. I had nights where I would answer them but not send it till the morning, so it didn't look like I was answering them.
Yeah, that's good acting.
Right, yeah, exactly. It makes me look like I'm doing, we're doing this book called the Wesley Challenge for the small group that I do lead right now. And one of the questions was, it's 21 days and there's a question every day. It's based on John Wesley's questions to his group of people. One of them is, do I go to bed on time and get up on time? And I typed it out, and just below it's just like, yes, I understand this is a joke for me to be asking this question, but here you go. But it's funny because with Michaela, I can't do that anymore. Like, if I want to be a zombie the next day, I could stay up but now that she sleeps from 8-ish to 2-ish, I'm not going to stay up till 2 and then get up at 5.
Right.
That wouldn't make it. And so, my latest struggle, if you will, has been, all right, now when do I find the time to, now that I'm cool letting them go for a little while, when do I actually take the time to follow up in a time that's healthy? Don't quite have the answer to that yet. But I'm affirmed in the sense of like, well, at least that's a decent effort to be going on versus, never mind, just answer them right away. So.
It's funny, last week I was out on the road somewhere and listening to something on NPR, and they were talking about how procrastinators actually produce better work. And I didn't get to hear, okay, where is this study? Where can I find this study?
Yeah. Sure, everywhere.
Yeah, that's right. It's not out yet.
Yeah, it'll be out soon. Yeah.
Our publishers keep asking. But it was really kind of what they were talking about again was certain behaviors and practices that people who take the time to allow things to kind of ferment, and particularly their thinking. You know, one of the persons was saying that vacation is valuable and time off is valuable for nothing else, in that our brains are wired to, at times where we're relaxing or we're concentrating on something else, that the kind of stuff that we put on the back burner is actually getting done. Which I thought was fascinating to hear. So that, the person who's working really hard and is at the task every day, apparently, and then these researchers get more frustrated, more anxious.
That's the stuff like, yeah.
And I don't want to be perceived as advocating for procrastination, but I think there is something to the idea of allowing time to be our friend. When we're trying to, particularly when we're trying to make changes in our own life.
Yeah.
Nothing happens as quickly as we want it to. Yeah. But on the other hand, again, thinking about things in a principled way. if you learn nothing else in CPE, I hope that on the last day, somebody do an exit interview and says, well, what did you learn in CPE? And you say, I learned about guiding principles and how important they are.
I have to check things off, but yeah.
Yeah.
That is, I know we have guiding principles listed in our verbatim, right?
Yep.
And then that is different from, but informed by what's the other thing?
Vision.
Vision.
Vision for ministry.
Vision for ministry. That's right. It is my goal, I intend to look through that, probably spend more time with that for this upcoming verbatim, to see if those things are still what I would list as, I guess, even if it's just my top 5, if that's still the case, and see how that looks.
And the thing is that the guiding principles can change,
Yeah.
and change to meet. I hope that's wind.
I think it is.
Okay.
I still see sun over there.
Yeah.
That's what I was just like, are you kidding me?
And guiding principles can be temporary too.
Yeah.
Okay, I need a guiding principle for pulling together an evangelism team.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah. So who do I want on it, or what qualities do I want represented on this team, so on and so forth. So and once you got that, you got it.
Yeah.
So, but our guiding principles are, I think, the best tool that we have for anxiety regulation and for giving ourselves agency,
Mm-hmm.
and focusing that agency or those behaviors.
Yeah. I believe that, because it's
For
something.
for functioning, for the best functioning that we can possibly.
Because you kind of, I imagine, it's possible to get to a point where that's your first reaction is to go to the guiding principles versus just reacting. Or your first response is to go to the guiding principles versus responding to your reaction.
Yeah, so if you were 100% self-differentiated, that's exactly what you would be doing. I think Bowen said that nobody's consistently 50% there.
Yeah.
But
Which is also kind of, sad and affirming at the same time.
Yeah.
Oh, at least we're not alone.
yeah, I mean, there's nothing. There's nothing to suggest that it isn't hard.
Yeah.
It isn't hard work, but I think in the long run, it's the most valuable thing that we can do for ourselves, because when we are concentrating again on our own differentiation, our own growth, our own patterns of behavior, we're not doing that selfishly,
Mm-hmm.
because it has impact on every one of our relationships. And I want to impact my relationships well,
Mm.
and so to do that, my first job is me.
Makes a lot of sense. I think it's funny you can spend too much time carrying the anchor to want to make your impact better than dropping the anchor on somebody else, right?
Yeah. Yeah, sometimes you wish that the Roadrunner cartoons were true, and that you could just run up behind your Wile E. Coyote, whoever that man, go beep beep, and he just falls over off the cliff.
Yeah.
But yeah, or maybe that's just my fantasy. I
Yeah. I'd be okay with that sometimes. Peace out, coyote.
Yeah, but I guess going back to that anchor, the sort of resentments that can build up over time, the longer that we drag them around. And I don't know how to get rid of the things. They're there. same time that my resentments about others drag me down, I think it's really important for me to ask myself questions. What responsibility do I have for this mess?
Yeah.
And what is my best thinking to relieve the situation? And so again, if I take my share, I'm not going to take, oh, it's all my fault now, okay, kind of thing. But I'm willing to accept my share and work on that.
And not more than your share.
And not more than my share.
I think that itself would be pretty good guiding principle.
And I think that's a general observation and criticism that I have of clergy, is that clergy tend to take on more than their share of the responsibility
Yeah.
for whatever situation's going on in their ministry.
Has there been a study as to why? Is it just because of the type of people that tend to be attracted to that position?
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Yeah. Highly empathetic, generally. I mean,
There are always exceptions.
there are always exceptions to the rule, but
Yes,
yeah,
it's
so highly empathetic, desiring to want to impact people's lives in a positive way, and highly public
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
And so don't deny that there's something to the public arena that attractive to a number of people.
Mm-hmm.
But on the other hand, it makes the public nature of ministry can also that whole dynamic that Steinke was talking about of people projecting on the pastoral office. I think a lot of that's because it's so public.
Yeah.
It's such a public office. I think he was right when he said people tend to focus their anxiety on the powerful or the public, and
Mm-hmm.
those tend to be presidents, politicians, principals, parents, and pastors.
Yeah, the P's.
The P's.
And it's interesting when he mentioned the other side too, like the two extremes.
Yeah,
So,
or the most vulnerable.
yeah,
Yeah.
and who the most vulnerable is shifts, and it's like, I think you mentioned it, just it's almost as if the prior vulnerable people don't even count at the moment, because it's always on this one vulnerable group, what that says.
Yeah.
And I don't think once you take on the role, you kind of give up your, I don't know, I'm sure there are vulnerable pastors out there, but like you lose some of that. I know I got taught about social media as I was going through seminary and what that looks like, and not to overshare and all that stuff. But seeing what some of my friends will post sometimes and be like, nope, can't do that.
Yeah.
Because of what it would mean coming from the position, even if it's for the person.
Right. So are you? I'm just a little bit curious, maybe a little confused when you're talking about losing the vulnerabilities. Are you talking about being
Perceived.
self-protective or cynical, or I'm just?
What I meant was when, I didn't phrase it quite right,
Okay.
but by becoming a pastor, you are a less vulnerable person, in the sense of like on the scale of vulnerable to powerful.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. All right. Yes. You give up. Yeah. All right. You're skewed more towards the powerful side.
Which is why I think it's important to stay a vulnerable.
Okay,
person.
all right, yeah, all right. I got you.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. All right. Was there anything else?
No, I
going on
think,
there?
I say I think a lot. I am going to look through the guiding principles coming Monday. And I think I could turn a bunch of stuff into you Monday, but
Okay,
make that
Great.
happen. Yeah.
good.
So,
All right.
wonderful.
Thanks for meeting me this morning.
Yeah, next week's Holy Week. I
It
imagine
is.
probably not a good time to try to meet.
Yeah,